I'm very excited about this panel because, as we all know, ingredients are really the building blocks of beauty and wellness brands. And whenever something new launches, there's a really special buzz that goes not into only the labs around the world where products are being created, but also marketing messages. And today I'm really excited to be speaking to three founders who are all leveraging biotech in their own unique ways to really not only launch novel molecules, but also transcend the traditional beauty industry mindset and challenge the limits of what's possible. And just for context, in 2023, the global biotechnology market was valued at 1.55 trillion and is expected to grow at a CAGR of 13.96%. So joining me today for this discussion are Alex Wiltschko, CEO of Osmo, Joshua Britton, founder and CEO of Jasmina, and Jasmina Aganovic, CEO of Arcaea. So all three of you have, as I mentioned, a very unique proposition in this space. Arcaea is giving the deodorant category an upgrade through microbiome reactive odor prevention technology, but also through the consumer brand offshoot Future Society is resurrecting extinct plant species through fragrance. Debut is offering brands a new level of speed and efficacy when it comes to biotech creation through fully vertical integration capabilities, a bio-to-consumer platform, and 7,000 active ingredients. And last but certainly not least, Osmo, an AI and olfactory science-based platform, is revolutionizing fragrance ingredients and scent applications, extending all the way to scent teleportation. And one thing I wanted to add with Debut as well is that this year marked the launch of an inflammaging-focused skincare line called Dende. So yes. So Jasmina, beginning with you, I wanted to speak to all three of you about how you're revolutionizing the industry from the ground up and what kind of ingredient innovation we can come to expect in the near future, and what will the implication be to how beauty products are formulated?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you, BeautyMatter, for having me. What gets me really excited about biology is that it enables new claims and new product experiences in the category. And I actually love that the opening talk was from Euromonitor, really actually highlighting how impactful and how in demand new ingredients and new formulations are. And super briefly, I just want to take a step back and talk about why that's really important and what it signifies from consumers. The technology that we use to create ingredients, basically that technology influences the ingredients that we can create, which influences the types of formulations we can create, which influences the types of products we can create, which influences the brands and the creators that ultimately create the products that we use every single day. So that is to say that the ingredients have a deep impact on how things show up. And when we can make new ingredients in new ways using new technologies like biology, everything can really change. And so now to make it a little bit more tangible, Arcaea is working on a variety of categories, but the last 2 years, we've really been focused on this category of personal scent, which might sound strange to think about. And actually, Carla just mentioned deodorants and fragrance, and you're like, whoa, that's two completely different product categories. From the perspective of biology, actually, I think it's kind of interesting that the way that we manage our personal scent is through two very spectrumed experiences in products. On one end, you have this commodity, frankly, grudge experience with deodorants, which is you use it. I don't know that anyone really loves their deodorants, right? We're trying to get there. But you use it, frankly, to not experience shame on a daily basis, which I think is really unfortunate, right, for what this industry represents and what it should represent. And then on the other end of the extreme, you have fragrances, which are this elevated, emotional, experiential journey. We can actually control and modulate how we choose to smell on a daily basis, and actually Arcaea is looking to blur those categories with the technology that we've created, both on the deodorant side, which we can maybe get to later, but also fragrances. We think that in the future, we will actually be able to control how we personally want to smell in the future, and that those categories will become blurred.
Hey, yeah, well, first of all, it's great to meet you all. The way Debut approaches biotechnology and beauty is trying to take lessons from the pharmaceutical industry. So, 100 years ago, we used to get our headache medication from the bark of a tree. And then in 1930, we used to go and make, chemistry was made. And then if you look at the top 100 drugs right now, 99 out of 100 of them are made through biotechnology. And if you look at why that was done, it was to drive the stuff that we really love in our products, which is purity, consistency, potency, personalization, sustainability. Those sorts of benefits can really drive the advent of a new era in beauty. So when we look at what biotechnology can bring in the new claims, it's because we want that trend, and we see that trend happening that's already happened in the pharma industry come into beauty. So the first talk this morning was on how health and wellness and science and med tech are really merging with beauty, and Debut exists to kind of power that innovation forward. So the way we look at claims is the exact same way, really, we look at innovating in products. And so, we always say that in beauty over the last 30 to 50 years, there's been incredible marketing innovation, some of the best marketing we've seen, but there's been very little product innovation. And when you look at why that is, you can't expect there to be product innovation when every single brand in every single country is using the same ingredients in the same contract manufacturers, in the same formulation technology. And so we're lucky enough to have a brand called Dende, and Dominique's at the front here. And what Dende does is answer that exact question, which is how can we bring new claims, new product, and new product innovation to the market? And without science, that would be very, very difficult. And science provides, it's weird, a new level of creativity and forward driving that starts with the claim and the product.
So, Osmo's mission is to give computers a sense of smell, which sounds a little bit weird and out there, but our computers can already see and they can hear. And the things that dogs can do with their noses are just astounding. I mean, they can save lives, right? The ability to detect scent. And our computers are completely blind to this. And we've been building towards this goal. We spent 5 years inside of Google, inside of a sub-team called Google Brain, and then we spun out to an independent company called Osmo. So we've been on this mission to fully digitize this sense, both reading and writing it. And look, the mountain peak of a truly digital experience of smell is many years away. But as we climb towards that, we're building businesses, and at some floors, we think we have a lot to offer. And so our first business that we've built in Osmo is using artificial intelligence to design the next generation of safe and affordable and beautiful fragrance ingredients. So of about the 1,000 to 2,000 ingredients that a perfumer has access to build new fragrances, about 40 are strategically important. They show up in almost every fragrance. They do not show up on the back label. They're usually embedded in that secret little word called fragrance in the ingredient list, but they're there. Of those 40 ingredients, about half of them are under regulatory threat, and for good reasons, right? Either they don't break down in the environment, they're ocular irritants, they are skin irritants, they're allergens, and they're either already labeled for reduction in use or changes in labeling, or they will just be taken off the market. So what we're doing is we're using artificial intelligence to explore the mind-boggling vastness of chemical space to find new safe fragrance ingredients that can not just give us safety and affordability, but also new olfactive regions, so new product capabilities, new fragrances that you can experience. And so we've brought our first few ingredients to the patent office, and we've licensed a few of them, but we're just at the very beginning stages right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think, right, with all of this, there's so much education that needs to happen, even on an industry side, right? There's a lot of confusion, myths out there. So, yeah, Alex, beginning with you, I was wondering if you could speak a bit to the biggest challenges in terms of industry education.
I guess there's multiple layers to that. So in the fragrance industry proper, there's more astronauts than there are perfumers in the world. And a perfumer will focus in and really learn about 100 to 200 ingredients for their career. And so it's like going to a composer and saying, I'd like to add a new key on your piano. Could you please learn to compose music with this new key? And so there's often an education process to help a perfumer understand that we can give them a new tool to do their job better and faster and more efficiently and safer in the context of the incredible pressure that they have to actually get fragrances out to their end customers, and those end customers then have to take those fragrances and produce whole products and get them to market. So we're embedded in a very complex ecosystem, and we found that we've had to educate folks along the entire value chain.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, consumer education. It's an interesting one at Debut. So Debut not only powers its own brands, but we also work with other brands on the formulation front all the way through to pack and fill. And we're also privileged enough to be backed and work with L'Oreal. So we have the whole spectrum of really an educational aspect. And I mean, there's two forms of the education, I would say. That the first is when we're working with brands and working with companies who are in this space already, in this community. It's a very much a claim-focused education. How does the ingredient work? How is it made? Does it allow them to hit sustainability goals? Does it allow them to make a new claim in market? It's very much that sort of language, the language that we're all familiar with today. Now, the harder aspect for us, and Dende and Dominique down here, is how do we educate the consumer on biotechnology in the market? And one of the reasons why Dende was born is, we see Debut as it's not just about a brand, it's not just about the company, it's about the transition to biotechnology. It's about the transition away from petroleum and cultivation. And for that to be successful, we need to be able to provide not only our own brands, but other brands, the tools to be able to talk to communities, whether that's East Coast, West Coast, Central, whether that's the UK, America. And it's amazing. We are out there learning. We've been learning for years, but trying to educate people specifically on what drives biotech-enabled products. Sometimes the word biotech doesn't even come up, right? Sometimes science doesn't even come up, and that's absolutely okay. I'd say science and sustainability is inherent to the process we create, but it's not necessarily what drives sale, purchase, conversion, repeat. That's often just, do they have the highest performing product on the market, and can they make it sexy, right? And if they can, that's great for us, but it's a very complex process, and what we try and do is take all these learnings, bottle them up, and so when another brand is interested in biotech, we can often give them the insight of, hey, this worked for California, this worked for New York, this didn't definitely work anywhere in the world. So if you're going to enable that transition, you really have to think about education at the consumer level and the brand level, and that's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, education is actually not a leading part of our strategy. I think with experiences I've had in my career as what I call a humbled scientist, I've learned that leading with education can be a challenge. So for us, product is at the forefront of what we're doing, and the product categories that we're pursuing are really focused on products that can do something that previously were not possible. Case in point, fragrances derived from extinct flowers, a way to manage your body odor without antimicrobials, blocking sweat, or masking smells. So it's a completely new way to think about things, and we want to make sure that the product stands for itself. We view the education as coming at a different part of the consumer journey. So just because the education doesn't come first doesn't mean that it's not important. We find a different way to make sure that it connects. But really for us, everything is just maniacally focused on the product and making sure that the product is good and that people love to use it. And if they want to learn about biology and biotech, great, we will have that for them there. But it's not something that needs to come along for the journey.
Yeah. And Joshua and Jasmina, when it comes to leveraging your expertise in biotech to helping brands join that revolution, what would you say are the challenges of really commercializing these ingredients?
Yeah, I'd say the first challenge is, and it goes back to what's currently available for brands, is that they're used to working with a particular CM who has formulation chemists, they're used to particular ingredients, they know how to use them. One of the biggest challenges we had to come across is that once we created the ingredient, we went through preclinical, clinical, and ready to go to market, create great products, we have to have somewhat of a large formulation team at Debut that works out how to physically get these ingredients into formulations at efficacious points with still the aesthetics and the beauty of the formulation. And so there's an inherent investment that's needed on the ingredient front, not only for Dende, not only for future brands, but when you bring something new to market, you have to invest into that. Otherwise, it's very hard for the adoption. I think the other thing is we tout product innovation a lot and trying to bring through new formulations that others don't have, new aesthetics, new textures, new claims. That we also have to invest into that well. And I think what we're seeing more and more of is not only our own brands demanding more, and so they should, because science does provide a lot of avenues, but when we talk to brand incubators and retailers, then that's where some of the most exciting conversations happen, because we forget that as a tiny company, we don't have access really to all of the search terms that they have, right? And they're able to come with millions, if not hundreds of millions of search terms of what's needed, what claims needed, what formulation they're looking for. And we see some of the biggest opportunities is how do you match science, biotechnology, Dende, and these other kind of aspects of the business to what they need and meet right in the middle. So I'd say that's kind of the biggest investments we make in terms of like the product aspects of it.
Challenges from our end, you know, I've mostly been on the finished goods side, so have launched brands throughout my career. This is my first time really being on the B2B side, and I will say, as like a person that has launched brands that have been venture backed, like the B2B business is brutal. It's like brutal. The financials are terrible. Like so one of the leading active ingredients that is formulated into 40% of the sun care launches in the United States. Guess how much revenue it does annually? $14 million, which is like, it's a million, it's nothing to sneeze at, but like, come on. Like, one of the major innovations in sun care on the ingredient side is doing $14 million in revenue. Like, this is actually why there is no innovation on the ingredient side, because once you like peel back the layers of like what it actually takes to like hire a bunch of formulation chemists to like not only identify it, get it to proof of concept, prove that it works, but like stick it into a formulation that works well, it's so much work and it takes so many FTE hours for maybe $14 million of revenue. Like, this is why there's like a chokehold in the industry right now around innovation, because that pipeline, the value equation basically doesn't really make sense. So the ingredient companies and suppliers that do exist, like if you look at their businesses, most of their businesses are comprised of commodity chemicals, which are like larger volume things, and then they have like a smaller portfolio of specialty active ingredients. The things that drive performance, though, are the specialty active ingredients. The things that are the front label claims are the specialty active ingredients, but they're used in such small percentages, which like exacerbates this challenge. So, you know, we think a lot about the value equation, and given the formulation stack being built off of chemistry, we think that there's maybe a new paradigm to be had around a formulation stack built around biology that could kind of flip this on its head. But the incentive is like not really there for like people to go and innovate in ingredients, by the way. So that's causing the problem too.
Yeah, probably just like, that's such a great point. I don't think people really realize here maybe just the level of R&D investment that goes into this. So when you look at Dende, for example, you might see, oh, it's a team of 10, but they're actually powered by like 90 scientists, right? So it takes us roughly $30 to $40 million a year to run the ingredient side. And that's a level of investment most brands will never, ever want to make into their pipeline, right? So the job that we have to come up with is, you know, when we do all the innovation, we create all the ingredients, we create the claims, we have two options. And the options is the B2B route, which is not attractive, especially not attractive to our investors. And then the second route is then working with brands to go quickly from here's an ingredient to here is your product packed and filled within that 6 to 9 month period, right? And that's the route which I think a few of us are going down now, which is we're here to accelerate that transition. And the best way we know how is to use our formulation expertise, our ingredient expertise, let you all run the brands and the messaging and the marketing, but we're here to make great products. And yeah, it was a really great point.
Yeah. And launching one ingredient, by the way, is not just launching one ingredient. So whether it's a sunscreen or whether it's a deodorant, think of all the different formats that you have. For deodorants, you have aerosols, you have sticks, you have sodium stearate sticks, you have wax-based sticks, you have emulsions, you have whatever. And then on the sunscreen side, is it an oil and water and oil, water and silicone? Like all the different formats means that like you need to validate your ingredient across all of those different formats. So one launch is really like 6 launches, right? If you want to penetrate as much to maybe get to that $14 million mark, right? So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of all the hard work behind the scenes, Alex, with Osmo, AI has been, you know, such a buzzword in our industry for a bit, but for your company, it's really the whole basis of how you're using this technology, which you've referred to as not a magic wand, but a power tool, in a way to really change how we approach fragrance. So I was wondering if you could give us an insider's perspective on the power and potential of AI.
Sure, absolutely. You know, AI, let's get our terms straight first. We used to call it statistics, and then we called it machine learning, and now we're allowed to call it AI, which still weirds me out a little bit.
Yeah.
AGI is off limits. We can't say that quite yet. But AI is an umbrella term for a whole bunch of tools that help you do really one of three things. It can help you explain the past, so organize data about the past. It can help you make decisions in the present. Do I go left or right? Do I make it blue or red? And it can help you forecast the future, right? Will red sell 10 million units or 20 million or 50 million units? And you're going to be blending among those three capabilities for past, present, and future, right? Understanding the past, making decisions in the present, forecasting the future. And at Osmo, we use all three of those things together. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to be able to really understand what the entire world smells like and understand if you will like that particular smell. So we want to digitize and make all of the world's smells accessible and be able to make forecasts and decisions based off of that information. And one piece of what we do is predict whether or not some molecule will actually smell in a way that's interesting to a very large customer. And so that's kind of where we are today. But it's if you're not using it in some form, you probably are. You've probably asked ChatGPT something. You probably made a Google search. Yeah. Probably clicked on a Google ad. So it's here, right? AI is pervasive in our lives. It's making a lot of. If you took an Uber, right? So that Uber driver did not make decisions about where to go. That was routed via software, and some of that software was artificial intelligence. So it's here and it's pervasive in our lives, and it's becoming more and more useful as these power tools. It's not magic, but as these power tools get easier to use, we'll find places where they actually can help us make better decisions or understand the world better or forecast what's coming better.
Yeah, and I think that understanding also extends to the claims and efficiency space when it comes to ingredients. And Joshua, I know you've drawn parallels between, as we just heard, between pharma and beauty or biotech specifically, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you think we're going to see that evolve.
Yeah, so the claim for us goes back to the science. And if you look at our kind of hierarchy, it's always going to be claim, product, science. And the discovery of new claims is not an easy business. It involves working with the right people, both inside of Debut and outside, to understand what are the up-and-coming claims, and then the generation of the ingredients. So I'll give two sides of it. I'll first of all tell you, why Dende was born, and then I'll say how the science has evolved to match it. So when me and Dominique started working together 3 years ago, we knew we were going to go into skincare after a few decision points. And we didn't want to just go after a claim that's already existing in market. So Dominique used social listening and other aspects to come up with and find that people had just started talking about inflammaging. And inflammaging was a new term, but there was no product out there to address it. And when you look to why that was, it's because there's no ingredient out there. So it was a very unique situation whereby people had this term, it's been medically described, it's making its way into the cosmetic community, but when you look to the formulation side, there was just no ingredient. And so once we were able to understand what we were trying to target, what we're trying to target on a clinical level, a preclinical level, a formulation level, we were able to then enact the scientists. And we had to go and discover a new ingredient. And the way ingredients are discovered now is we screen tens of thousands of molecules now, the exact same way the pharmaceutical industry does, but on skin cells, skin tissue, different types of skin tissues from different ethnicities, different geographies, different types of physical skin cells. And we look at 30,000 gene responses. So you can imagine that anti-aging is a few gene responses, and so is inflammation, and so is skin brightening, and you name it. Every claim, if you know the science, you can start to have real innovation, because once you know how the claim is meant to come forward in the product, you know the genes, we can go back to the database and ask, okay, how do we turn those genes on, and how do we create that clinical response? And so we're at this point now in claims where people come to us with claims like inflammaging, which were not a thing. There's been no ingredient. And that's the most exciting part for us, because when you're in that position as a brand, when you can come forward with a new claim and have a new ingredient, and I know we'll get into IP later on, but that's very exciting. That means you will be the only brand able to launch into that category until other people catch up. And again, how can you do it? Well, Dominique's lucky that she has 80 scientists working for her, right? So that's how we look at claims. And if you walk into our lab, it's very much like a pharmaceutical lab. There is discovery scientists. We use machine learning, not AI at the point, to kind of find out and like design or create small molecules, we call them, or ingredients that interact with skin. And then once that's done, it goes through preclinical, all the safety testing, or like all of that, the same as a pharmaceutical as well. But where it ends up is in the formulation aspect, which then goes out to brands, which then goes out to the world. And so when we draw the parallel between pharmaceutical and beauty, the claim language is different, the ability of the molecule is different, but the discovery aspect is becoming one. The same scientists that are trained in pharmacology are now going to the beauty scenes. And there's been a few articles like beauty formulations and beauty chemists, they're now like the rock stars of our industry. They are able to create product innovation, not marketing innovation. It always goes back to that for us.
Yeah. Alex, I just quickly wanted to chat about to you about, you mentioned you're teaching a computer how to smell, which I think is such an exciting proposition. And I'm curious to hear, what impact you're hoping to have on how the industry approaches fragrance and how also consumers will interact with it.
I think there's a couple layers to this. It's actually pretty difficult to get a fragrance that hasn't already been launched before into a product. So there's a lot of, flankers is a term, whatever the term is you want to use for it. Like the fragrance that you get from a fragrance house is usually something that's come before, right? So the space of what we can smell, of the smells that are out there that are beautiful, some of which are very highly culturally specific, like a flower in a tree in China, or a fruit, on a vine in Lebanon. These very culturally specific smells with high liking attached to them are really not generally accessible from the fragrance world. And so if you go to a fragrance house and you say, I'd like a fragrance, you're typically going to say, okay, what is your benchmark and what's your price? And you're going to get a fragrance that's basically just like that benchmark. So the space of what we could smell is huge, and what we can get from the fragrance industry is very small, right? So if we actually can build a map of all the world's smells and associate liking with different parts of that map. So think of it as a weather map. And in some parts of olfactive space, it's raining, and that's great. Or in some parts, it's dry, and nobody's paying any attention to it. Nobody's ever built that map. So that's what we're doing. It's very expensive and very difficult to do that in order to comprehensively basically decode the world's smells, but that's what we're doing internally at Osmo. And so I think that will open up new olfactive spaces, because you'll be able to actually have these fragrances and put them affordably and safely into products. In the fragrance industry, simply just not providing that service today.
And my last question was really around how, especially, whether it's fragrance or other categories, right? We do live in a world of dupes. And I think that what's really exciting about biotech, too, is it gives this unique IP. And so, Jasmina, starting with you, I'd love to hear how you think we're going to unlock a new layer of creativity.
Sure. What I'm about to say might be controversial, but I've been in this industry long enough to just know that when someone is doing something well, a lot of people are going to try and copy it. And I just think that that's how the industry is. So you can fight it and try and not do that, or you can just make sure that the industry has the best possible technology to work with. And so I think one of our company values, I will say, is community building. And so this is why the B2B business, even though it is not maybe financially attractive, right? Like the financials of our business work out on the consumer side for us with our brand. But the B2B side of our business is really important, because I have been on the bleeding edge of innovation and really proud of it, and chest beating, saying, we're the only ones that have it. And then you see that other people try and copy, and when the science isn't there, the Euromonitor presentation actually talked about the microbiome, and this happened in the microbiome space. There was so much demand from 2014 to 2020, and the science wasn't there. And actually, it was Allure magazine that wrote a mea culpa, basically saying, hey, we called it too soon, right? The science isn't there yet. And not only that, but there were class action lawsuits against major companies, both Procter & Gamble brands and Unilever brands. And that is unfortunate, because the person that loses the most is the consumer in this case, right? It creates doubt and confusion for them. And this is not because the microbiome doesn't have potential. It certainly does. It's just not there yet. And so what I care about is the consumer. So I just want to make sure that like the brands and the founders who are genuinely well-meaning and they do think that they are creating the best possible products for their consumer, that they just have the best possible things to work with. So my controversial take is I'm pro-dupe. I've embraced it. I just know that it's going to happen. I just want to make sure that a consumer anywhere, whether they're shopping at like a ultra luxury store or whether they're shopping in mass, that they just have the best access to the best possible ingredients for what they're creating.
Yeah.
That's it.
Alex?
Yeah, I'll take the other side of it a little bit, which is, dupes exist because they're easy to do, right? And there are parts of, so I can only talk about fragrances. I don't know anything about active ingredients or more kind of cosmetic formulations. But if you make a fragrance and you give that fragrance to a perfumer, in about a month, you're going to get a perfect copy. And it's going to cost you between $20,000 and $50,000 to make that perfect copy. And fragrance houses do this all the time. It's their bread and butter, especially the mid and low tier fragrance houses. There are parts of olfactive space, there are smells that are out there that contain molecules that are uncopyable. And the molecules are IP, right? So I think in fragrance specifically, we haven't had the technology to actually bring IP protection or IP defense, not full protection, into the real world, but that's starting to change. And you really, because fragrance space is huge and the number of combinations of molecules is just mind-boggling, you actually need computers. You actually need artificial intelligence to help you pick fragrances which are uncopyable. And we've seen this become possible with some of our partners. But the average fragrance with the kind of common molecules is eminently copyable, and that's not going to change unless there's an act of Congress, right, that says, okay, there's now IP protection, whether it's copyright or trademark, for scent in a way that actually is amenable to brands. But there are technological solutions that I think are just becoming available that actually allow you to claim a part of olfactive space, claim a smell, and make it so that it's very difficult for others to copy. In absence of that, yes, dupes are prevalent and they will continue to occur. And I think there's, it's actually a service to the consumer in some cases. But if you want to protect your scent, there is a way to do that, but it's just barely possible now.
Yeah, I think I lean more on your side of the protection of intellectual property. So the interesting thing is when brands come to us and they want to own their IP, it's formulation IP, right? And they say, we need to own the formulation IP. But the interesting thing is, when they want to start formulation, they send us someone else's product, and they say, we love that benchmark, right? So they're like, we want our IP, but no one else can have it, but we really like Olay's moisturizer, right? So it's a really interesting moment for me as a scientist. Now, the interesting thing about biotech is you're about to see 3 layers of intellectual property coming through for brands who genuinely want to protect their products. So when we think about intellectual property, it's not on just the simple formulation aspect. It is on how that molecule interacts with the skin to create a basic therapeutic response, right? How does that molecule interact to lower the certain things that lead to inflammation? So that's number 1. Number 2 then is on composition of matter. These patterns are almost impossible to get in the beauty industry right now because everyone has the same ingredients, and so you can't get it. But when you bring a new ingredient through, we quickly get intellectual property on that therapeutic response and on the composition of matter, right? So we think that's pretty good IP protection. The other type of IP we have is that we are the only company in the world to produce that ingredient. So when we go after brand new novel ingredients, we put IP around how the cell makes it, how the enzymes make it, and we spend a lot of money protecting that. So when you start to look at biotechnology for us, it should be able to eliminate dupes because you have those 3 layers of intellectual property, and to take on 3 layers of intellectual property is a very expensive task. So it won't stop them all, but when you have an ingredient that takes us 4 years to go from concept to producing, and it takes us, hundreds of millions of dollars in the lab to produce that, try creating that quickly, and it just can't be done. And if you do, you have 3 layers of intellectual property to hit. So it provides our brands some comfort, and it provides a competitive advantage that if you were able to get one of these ingredients alone, you will be the only one in market with it.
Yeah. So that's it for time, but I wanted to maybe get 1 or 2 quick questions from the audience in case someone has a question. Yes, here.
Hi, this is really fascinating topic, and I'm so curious. Obviously, in the beauty space, there's been a lot of movement and interest in what one might call clean beauty. So how do you guys think about the stuff you're doing, because it feels so scientific, I mean, it's not feel so scientific, it is literally scientific. And how do you think about what you're doing relative to this idea of natural, clean, sustainable? Thank you.
Sure, I'll start. Hi, Gigi, good to see you. You know, I would like to hope that the clean beauty movement actually is very embracing of biotech. I viewed biotech as actually an expansion of the palette that a lot of people who are interested in the concept of clean see, right? Clean largely has been associated with plants, but with biotech, we can start to dabble in other parts of the natural molecules of the tree of life and do that ethically and sustainably. So that's one reason I think that I hope and I see indications that they will be embracing of it. I think another reason that they will be embracing of it is because it gets at one of the core tenets behind clean, which is transparency and safety. And so biotech can deliver on transparency and safety in ways that traditional sourcing methods struggle with and are going to continue to struggle with, and I think will increasingly struggle with. So I hope that it will be like an evolution of clean. And I also hope that it'll add more dimension around the performance element of clean. Oftentimes clean has been associated with like a trade-off, right? You feel like you have to trade something off in order to make this better for you decision. And I hope that biotech can really help kind of complement and alleviate that. So I think a net good, despite it being a, you know, kind of convoluted topic area.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
I think I'm out.
Oh.
I was going to say, you know, we put an article out called that the opposite of clean beauty isn't dirty, it's science. And that's a genuine thing. I mean, if I have to look forward to the clean beauty movement, do I think it's here in 10 years? No, I don't. I think it's become overhyped as a marketing tool, and we're all starting to see the outfall of it, which is products deteriorating in market, growing mold, the sunscreens on it, right? It's become a beautiful marketing tool. It's now table stakes, and I just think it's a ton of rubbish most of the time. So now it enters a really great opportunity for retailers not to look at clean anymore, but how to define the new era of bio-based, biotech, because everything that we do on the stage fits into the clean beauty movement, but hopefully with products that don't grow mold on the shelf, right? So I just don't see a future where clean is the buzz term we're talking about in 10 years. I hope it's past that. I hope the ingredients are past that. Sustainability is inherent to what's going on. It has to be. You know, you have L'Oreal set 95% bio-based goals. And once they set goals, once others set goals, we have to go there, right? Otherwise, we're behind. So, yeah, I don't think clean beauty will be here soon. And that's a good thing, by the way. I think biotech really can provide another level of customer satisfaction and product satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Alex, any last?
Let's do one more question, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have a quick one, please. But yes, is anyone?
Hi, my name's Daniel, and I work with Cody. I'm on their fragrance team, so this is a question for Alex. I was very curious about your like IPing the molecule, and I was wondering how you classify or map the molecules, because we usually map them by family and subfamily, and I was wondering if you follow the same pentagram or you have another way to classify them.
Great question. So the core engine of Osmo is what we built at Google and then elaborated at Osmo, which is a map of scent. So just like RGB is a map of color, and it's 3 dimensions because you've got 3 different color channels in your eyes, our map of odor is actually about 300 dimensional because you have 100 times more receptors in your nose of different kinds of channels of olfactory information than you do in your eyes. We learn this from data. And so the normal top, middle, base note and the grand families and subfamilies, like we do use those for some of our labeling tasks, but when we talk about scent, we give it a 300 dimensional coordinate so that we know exactly what it smells like. And so these molecules are placed in this map, which I can't visualize, I can't show to you, but the computer can deal with it, and this is what we use every single day. And so we reason about mixtures in molecules in this map of odor, this odor space, which is a core capability to the company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick
Thank you.
follow-up. is this accessible to anyone?
Why don't we have a
outside?
conversation?
Yeah.
And anybody else who's interested in that,
Yeah.
just find me.
I was going to say, that's unfortunately all the time we have for this panel, but all three of you will obviously be around for questions and further discussions. I
everyone.
think.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.